Hi, Rod on the range today. Please bear with gunfire here in the background. Recently we did a presentation on reduced recoil double-aught buck ammunition in your personal protection home defense shotgun. Now when people select a 12-gauge shotgun for personal protection or home defense, and I do mean specifically a 12-gauge shotgun, many people will load with many different types of ammunition, but double-aught buck is probably the most common projectile. But when we're talking about shotguns for personal protection, home defense, another type of projectile that's very commonly used, or if not commonly used, at least commonly discussed, is number 4 buckshot. So today we're going to shoot some 12-gauge number 4 buck reduced recoil. And what I have is PMC 12-gauge 2 3/4 inch number 4 buck low recoil ammunition. And we'll compare that to some types of number 4 buck that I would consider typical. Winchester Super X, Remington Green and Yellow Box, Federal Blue Box, all of which are 12-gauge 2 3/4 inch number 4 buck 27 pellet with an advertised velocity on each box expressed as 1,325 feet per second. Now by contrast, our PMC low velocity ammunition has an advertised velocity stamped on the box of 1,200 feet per second, 125 feet per second less. And we know that when we're using reduced recoil ammunition, we are giving away velocity or pellet count or both. So we're giving away 125 feet per second, but what about pellet count? That's interesting in this case. When you buy shotgun ammunition, it's typically labeled on the box as how much shot is in each shell. Now when you buy birdshot ammo, that's often expressed in terms of weight. This birdshot is labeled as having 1 1/4 ounce of shot. But when you buy buckshot, that's usually expressed in terms of pellet count. Double-aught buck 9 pellet, double-aught buck 12 pellet, number 4 buck 27 pellet. But our PMC ammunition is labeled as having 1 ounce of number 4 buck. So how much shot is that? Well, I cut 2 of these shells apart and I discovered that they have 28 pellets in each shell. So not only are we not giving away a pellet count, we're actually getting 1 more pellet. But how will the PMC low recoil ammunition compare to our more typical ammunition? Let's find out. And we'll start with some tedious chronograph testing. I've said this before, we typically do chronograph testing at 7 yards because the FBI spent decades telling us that 7 yards was the mean distance for a lethal confrontation. But when I'm using a shotgun loaded with multiple projectile rounds, for the safety of the chronograph, I shoot at 4 yards. So I've got my Mossberg Model 500 loaded with our Remington Green and Yellow Box 12-gauge 2 3/4 inch number 4 buck. Let's see what kind of velocities we get. 1335, 1370, 1338, 1295, and 1335. Let's see how that stacks up against our other types of ammo. And now our Winchester Super X 12-gauge 2 3/4 inch number 4 buck 27 pellet. 1213, 1241, 1202, 1202, and 1231. Let's try another type of ammo. And now our Federal Blue Box 12-gauge 2 3/4 inch number 4 buck 27 pellet. 1275, 1285, 1290, 1218, and 1246. Now let's see how those compare to our PMC. And now our PMC 12-gauge 2 3/4 inch low recoil ammunition number 4 buck 28 pellet. 1058, 1074, 1095, 1063, and 1066. And now let's go crunch the numbers. As I've said before, not all shotgun ammunition is created equal, and chronographs don't always agree with each other. But today I saw that the Remington ammunition had a lot more velocity than the other types, and a lot more velocity than what I expected. So now I've got 5 more rounds of the Remington green and yellow box 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch number 4 buck 27 pellet. I'm going to chronograph this and see if we get any different readings than we did the first time. 1296, 1312, 1271, 1311, and 1276. Those numbers make a lot more sense to me. And I really can't explain why we got such different numbers when we started. And no, it wasn't a cold barrel. I fired shots before we started doing the chronograph testing. But either way, now let's go crunch those numbers. Well, I crunched the numbers and here's the results. Now with the Remington, we got a mean velocity of 1334. Then we fired 5 more shots of Remington, got a mean velocity of 1293, and I think that's the more accurate reading. With the Federal Blue Box, we got a mean velocity of 1262, and with the Winchester, 1218. Now you saw that when I was firing the Winchester ammunition, I got the same reading twice in a row. That's indicative there may have been a malfunction, so I threw out one of those 1202s and off camera fired one more shot, got a velocity of 1206, and that's what I used for the mean. Now with our PMC ammunition, we see a mean velocity of 1071. That's 147 feet per second less than our slowest of the typical ammunition, so it's definitely a lot less powerful. But how much less recoil was there? Well, in my subjective perception, I could tell that there was less recoil, but I didn't think it was enough to make a difference. If a particularly lightly built person or an inexperienced shooter was finding the recoil of these ammunitions to be prohibitive, I do not perceive that they would shoot the PMC ammunition and have a significant amount of relief. It probably wouldn't make enough difference to make a difference. So we see our PMC ammunition is significantly less powerful, does not have significantly less recoil. How effective will it be? Let's see if we can put that to the test. I've got my Mossberg Model 500 shotgun with its 20.5-inch improved cylinder bore barrel, and I'll shoot this shoot-and-see target from 25 yards with our various types of ammunition and see how they compare. And we'll start with our Remington green and yellow box number 4 buck 27 pellet. So out of 27 pellets, I have 26 impacts, 16 on the shoot and see, and then 10 I covered with the red pasty so they'd be easier to see. Now my aiming point was right here. So with my shotgun, this ammo pattern's a little bit high, but still not a bad pattern. So I'll paste up the shot holes on the shoot and see target and shoot one more shot with this Remington ammo from 25 yards to see if we can confirm these results. So again, out of 27 pellets, we have 26 impacts, 13 on the shoot and see and 13 on the cardboard that I've marked with the yellow pasties. So fairly consistent result and not a bad pattern. So now I'll put up a new shoot and see target and we'll see how that compares to our Winchester ammunition. With our Winchester ammunition with 27 pellets, we see 16 impacts on the shoot and see and 11 impacts on the cardboard. Now with the Remington ammunition marked with the red and yellow pasties, those that weren't on the shoot and see were mainly above, but with the Winchester ammunition marked with the blue pasties, those that didn't hit the shoot and see target were centered around the target. So it looks like we might have a different point of impact even though our point of aim is the same. So I'll paste up these shot holes on this shoot and see target and fire one more shot from 25 with the Winchester and see if we can confirm these results. So now out of our 27 pellets, we have 27 impacts, 19 on the shoot and see, and 8 around the target marked with the green pasties. It looks like there's more than 19 on the shoot and see because it knocked off a couple of the pasties that were already there. But what we see is that both the Remington and the Winchester ammunition hold fairly good patterns, but the Remington definitely patterned higher. And this shows us that different ammunition will perform differently in different guns, and you have to pattern your own shotgun with the ammunition you intend to use. But now that we have these results, we'll take down this target, put up a new piece of cardboard, a new shoot and see, and we'll shoot our PMC ammunition and see how it compares. The PMC ammunition has 28 pellets, and what we see is 12 on our shoot and see target, and then 16 on our cardboard marked with the yellow pasties. So I'll paste up the shot holes on this shoot and see, and we'll fire a second shot and see if we can confirm these results. With our first shot of PMC ammunition, we had 12 hits on the shoot and see and then 16 on the cardboard. With our second shot, we had 12 hits on the shoot and see and then 15 on cardboard. So very consistent results. But compared to our other types of ammunition, this pattern is certainly not any better. If anything, it's worse. So in terms of pellets on paper, the effectiveness of our low recoil ammunition, I'd say, is mediocre. But how about its effectiveness in terms of penetration? Let's put that to the test. To evaluate penetration, we'll use the meat target. Now, for those who haven't seen it before, the meat target is leather jacket skin, followed by pork steak pectorals, pork ribs, bag of oranges to simulate lung tissue, more pork ribs on the back, 4 layers of t-shirt on the front, 4 layers of t-shirt on the back, and the whole thing followed by the new and improved high-tech fleece bullet stop. I'll shoot this from 10 yards with my Mossberg 500, which is loaded with our Remington green and yellow box 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch number 4 buck 27 pellet. We'll evaluate the results, put together a new meat target, shoot it with our low recoil PMC ammunition, and see how those results compare. Well, with our number 4 buckshot, we see a lot of holes in our pork chop pectoral, a lot of holes in the ribs on the front of the target. But where the projectiles actually hit rib bones, a couple of them are broken, but we don't see as much damage as you'd typically see with the larger pellets. We see a lot of damage to our orange lung tissue, and as far as the ribs on the back, there's some damage here, but a lot of the pellets were stopped by the ribs, some were stopped in the ribs, some of the pellets were stopped by the t-shirt, a few made it through to the first or second layer of fleece. So I would say that our number 4 buckshot would be effective on the intended target as long as you weren't trying to shoot anything that was particularly rotund. If you were being stalked by a sumo, you might want to go with bigger shot. But now let's put together a new meat target, shoot it with our PMC low velocity ammunition, and see what kind of results we get with that. With our low velocity buckshot, again, we see a lot of holes in our pork steak pectoral and a lot of holes in the ribs on the front of the target. But in this case, a few of the pellets were stopped by the ribs on the front of the target. We see a lot of damage to our orange lung tissue. But as far as our ribs on the back of the target, as where before a few were stopped by the ribs, some were stopped in the ribs, a few made it through, in this case, most of the pellets were stopped by the ribs, didn't penetrate the ribs at all. Some of the pellets were stuck in the ribs, and as far as I can tell, only 2 actually made it through the ribs on the back of the target. Now, when I say that projectiles were stopped by the t-shirt on the back of the target, what I mean is that they're caught in the t-shirt. They're actually in there somewhere. In this case, although 2 pellets made it through the ribs on the back of the target, they were stopped by the t-shirt in the sense that they just fell onto the table. They weren't actually in the t-shirt material at all. And of course, none made it through to the high-tech fleece bullet stop. So when comparing our full power buckshot to our low velocity buckshot, I am seeing a significantly reduced amount of penetration. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Well, when we evaluated our low recoil double-aught buck, there was definitely significantly less recoil, but in my observation, it still maintained a high level of effectiveness on our meat target. But in talking about our PMC low velocity number 4 buckshot, well, it definitely had less velocity, it definitely had not very impressive patterns, it definitely had less penetration in our meat target, but as far as less felt recoil, in my subjective evaluation, I could feel less recoil, but in my opinion, not enough less to make any significant difference for virtually any shooter. So I would have a difficult time finding any application for this ammunition. So as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching our PMC low velocity number 4 buckshot ammunition video.